According to some Ukraine war commentators, the Kherson offensive is a total success for Ukraine, that the Russian army is trapped. Oh really? Stop BSing your audience with fan fiction. If there's no Ukrainian offensive, the Russians are not trapped. You know, wars are about geography, and geography is depicted in maps. This was the Kherson front line on the 14th of May. Pay attention to all the details. Ready? This is the front line on the 14th of August. Even if I squint really hard, I can't notice the difference. So much hype for what? This entire Kherson thing should have been renamed the Offensive of the Broken Dreams. For months now, experts are claiming that Russia is losing its morale and that they're running out of tanks. Here's a wake-up call. Reality is very different. All this we heard in the past is wishful thinking. Here's another batch of brand new T-90s heading towards the front line, and many more are being built at the rear. And now Mikhail Podolyak, an advisor to Zelensky, he said that statements about the counteroffensive of Ukrainian troops at Kherson were part of an information psychological operation. Ukraine is waging a creative war, where the demoralization of Russian troops is considered the key task. Typical Soviet behavior. This is a lie. Truth is, Ukrainians sent everything they had for this offensive. They even pulled troops away from Donbass. And it didn't work. It failed. But now the statements, let's transform all this into a diversion, that everything of this was planned. But a diversion from what exactly? A diversion from the collapsing front in Donbass, perhaps? Every day there's a new breakthrough there. Oh yeah, I almost forgot, there was also this huge hype that the Kherson offensive was actually a diversion for the real offensive against Izium. That the Russians were tricked, haha. And yes, Ukrainians did advance a couple kilometers. But ever since August 5, the front line has not changed a bit. This probably means that the Russians withdrew and Ukrainians simply took over empty positions. That's it. And now, according to the Financial Times, Ukrainians don't expect to get enough capabilities to plan any decisive counteroffensive for this year. Our major plans will have to be next year now. Okay. Hi and welcome to History Legends. Here are the latest news about the Russo-Ukrainian war. Here we cut the BS and talk about what the media doesn't tell you. As always, information changes by the hour, so if you have any new info, just comment it below. If you're new to this channel, make sure to check out my Ukraine playlist so you don't miss anything I've said in the past. And if you want to support my work, make sure to check out my Patreon or PayPal, and thank you to everyone that has already helped. With that being said, welcome to the headquarters. Pisky has fallen. You see, this is the current front line in Donbass. The Russians are currently launching multiple major offensives against the suburbs of the city of Donetsk, against positions held and reinforced by Ukrainians since 2014. And the Russians knocked out the first beam of this entire Ukrainian defensive line with the full capture of the village of Pisky. We already talked about it in a previous video, but now it's confirmed. And you might be right. It might be just another village. Insignificant village. The Russian advanced 3.5 kilometers in 2 weeks. This would make World War I commanders blush. At this rate, the Russians will reach the Dnieper in 4.5 years. But seriously, the Battle of Pisky has proven to be extremely difficult for both sides. The lack of civilian population allowed both sides to take off their gloves. To make up for artillery shelling, the Ukrainian army sent battalion after battalion to slow down any advance of the DNR forces. However, this lack of civilians also has been an advantage to the attacking side, which used all sorts of artillery munitions in its arsenal to destroy the Ukrainian defenses one block after another. I'm telling you, the next battle will be extremely important for Ukraine, perhaps even decisive. In reality, Russians already pushed 3 kilometers beyond Pisky, right at the edge of Permovaisk. Here's video footage of Russian artillery firing at Ukrainian troops entrenched in these houses along the M04 highway between Pisky and Permovaisk. So it clearly shows that the Russians are already pushing into the city of Pervomaisk. We can expect Russian allied forces to advance through the urban area, under the cover of buildings and artillery barrage. Now, to avoid a complete collapse of the line of defense in southern Donbass, Ukraine has no other choice but to put up an even greater resistance to stop the Russians at Pervomaisk and Vodiane. These will be the next two hotspots. But the front line is cracking. After multiple failed attempts to get hold of Krasnohorivka, the Russians instead pushed north and broke through Ukrainian lines and reached the village of Nevelske just south of Pisky, which now forms a small cauldron. Ukrainians have no other choice but to withdraw. Now a few kilometers northeast from Pisky, DPR forces made slow progress at Avdiivka, but lately their advance at the exit of the village of Spartak was halted. Allegedly, they're making preparations to storm a former military base, located right there on the map. Instead of an assault, 1.4 kilometers in open ground, and you can see it with the satellite imagery, there's barely any cover. Russian assault units are attempting to outflank the base by creeping through this lake and forested area, and thus reduce the distance of open ground to cover to 300 meters. After that military base, there's only this small settlement before DPR forces can take the battle to Avdiivka proper. And this is dangerous because time and time again, Russians have demonstrated their skills in urban warfare. Ukrainians have to do everything possible to keep the Russians at bay and keep them away from entering urban settlements. If the Russians take one block, counterattack immediately at all costs, because the next day it's gonna become 10 blocks and then 50 blocks. It's just a matter of time. Now I believe that the Russian objective is a double penetration and have the two tips link up at Orlivka, which would effectively squeeze the Ukrainians out of their Avdiivka stronghold. Again, it all depends how well Ukrainians manage to hold on to this 12-kilometer defensive line from the military base to Opitne, to Vodyane and Pervomaiske. The Vuhledar cauldron. There's something I feared in my previous video that might become reality. But such an attack could put the Ukraine grouping at Vuhledar into a precarious salient. Perhaps even an encirclement if the Russians have enough reserves to attack at Velika Novosilka. However, the Russians are not advancing on Velika Novosilka, but 30 kilometers east against the Ukrainian stronghold at Vuhledar. What's crazy is that only a couple weeks ago, the Ukrainian army managed to push south at Vuhledar and even advance a couple kilometers. People were getting excited, they thought they were going to Mariupol, but now all hope of an offensive is gone. Ukrainians are in a complete defensive posture in the sector. Here you can see DNR troops advancing on what remains of the outskirts of Marinka. My guess is that this footage is taken on the southern part, closer to the fields, where the Russians try to outflank the fortified position. Marinka is located just in between Vuhledar and Pisky. Russian and DNR forces captured half the city. So the Ukraine claims that the Russians have made no gains at all, were all BS. Some Russian sources even claim that they reached this important road that crosses over the city, and from there advance towards the village of Pobieda. If this is true, Ukrainian infantry will have a hard time holding on to Marinka, as they're literally being outflanked. And at the same time, Russians broke through at Novomikhailivka. So with this Russian attack, and the one at Vuhledar, combined with the main assault on Marinka and Pobieda, this puts the Ukraine grouping in this salient in a very difficult position. And once again, they have no other choice but to withdraw or face encirclement. My question is, can Ukrainians effectively defend both the attack against Marinka Vuhledar and protect the Pervomaiske-Opitne line at the same time? Or will they have to pick one to shorten the front line? At the same time, these battles have taken a toll on a lot of DNR troops that have been fighting relentlessly since day one, a time when a lot of Russian professional soldiers refused to go to the fight. Here you can see about 100 DNR troops, a company that doesn't want to go to the front anymore because of high losses, poor logistical support, and so on. And this is something else that's interesting. Even though modern warfare has a lot of technology, you still need a lot of infantry. The Elensky line. From what I heard, Ukrainians are seriously outgunned along the Siversk-Bakhmut line, also known as the Elensky line, because against the advice of his generals, he did not want to withdraw from this position. And in a way, perhaps he was right. It's been over a month that Lysychansk has fallen, and yet the line is still standing, but it comes at a cost. At Soledar, right there on the map. Lately, a lot of the fighting took place south of the village at the Knauf factory. After multiple attacks and counterattacks, allegedly the Ukrainian 14th Brigade reported 2 2,000 casualties, KA, wounded or missing. New video footage shows Chechen, Russian, DPR and LPR forces entering and consolidating their presence in the Knau factory building after many days of close quarters fighting. Fighting is now reported 1 kilometer north of this position. Now, since they entered the industrial area from the northeast, that also means that the Russians are not in full control of the suburb of Bakhmutske. And during this push from the northeast, the Russians also took full control of the gypsum quarry, and some even claim they got as far as the Belokamenka factory. At this rate, they're really pushing towards the center of Soledar. Again, a difficult choice for the Ukrainians. Should they hold Siversk or Soledar, or even Bakhmut? Holding all three at the same time will be very difficult. They will have to spread out their reinforcements and reserves everywhere. Further south at Bakhmut, Wagner mercenaries are pushing along the Patrice Lumumba street. And this was confirmed by footage of Ukrainian soldiers pulling back towards the center of Bakhmut along the street. Talking about Wagner, the musicians, Ukrainian HIMARS hit one of their barracks and caused massive casualties. Dozens of KIA and many more wounded. Apparently, they spotted the position when a Russian reporter published images of Wagner's base in residential apartments block in Popasna on the 8th of August. And a couple days later, boom! Watch out what you see online, kids. Anyway, now Russians claim they hold this entire industrial area east of Bakhmut. Or how do you pronounce it? Bakhmut or Bakhmut? Now, I don't know to what extent they actually control this area, but from what I've read, their recon units are pushing towards the residential areas. Now, of course, I would like to debunk this, but Ukraine has already destroyed one of the bridges right here, which was visually confirmed by German journalist Julian Röpke. And at this moment, 2 bridges north are still standing and 2 in the south. But it's obvious that the Ukrainians are panicking a bit, that the Russians are advancing faster than they had expected. And why would they? It was so surprising that the Russians went for a full frontal assault on Bakhmut. And the gamble seemed to have paid off. Now, south of Bakhmut, in the past 24 hours, Ukrainian forces had to withdraw from the village of Versina, and Russian artillery is already heavily shelling their second line of defense, along the Zaitseve-Kodema line. If Zaitseve falls as well, I don't know how long these Ukrainian soldiers in the fields, in this salient, can hold. My guess is that, just like we've seen before, they will have to withdraw. And the other thing is that Zaitseve-Kodema is the last line of defense before the Russians reach the highway south of Bakhmut. I'm telling you, a push from this direction can inflict a lot of damage on Ukrainians. Autumn is coming. With the summer operation soon coming to an end, both sides will use the bad weather to restructure and replenish their forces. There will be much less cover for infantry in forests and fields, meaning most of the fighting could take place in urban centers, which are known to be infantry-heavy battles, and in a way that could benefit Ukraine. Talking about that, the Russians are making severe moves against Kharkiv. They reported capturing the villages of Borshova and Udi. In my opinion, the overall strategy is to encircle Kharkiv both from the south, using the troops from Donbass, but also from the north. And this attack here might be the staging ground of a future offensive. But I don't think they intend to capture Kharkiv, this mega city, just now. But perhaps for the winter, when all the forests around Kharkiv that acted like a natural barrier will lose their greenery and allow Russian drones to spot Ukrainian infantry. It really seems to me that the Russians are placing their pawns for the next round. They're also threatening Mykolaiv with the capture of Blahodatne, which is contested by the Ukrainians. But if true, the city is only located 30 kilometers from the eastern suburbs of Mykolaiv. 2 strategic Ukrainian cities are at risk. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Let me know what you thought of my analysis in the comment section below. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to support the channel, you can do it on Patreon or PayPal. The links are in the description.